All right, folks, the first review in our 2025 mid-power e-bike shootout, the Ari Nebo Peak 1.5, a bike that did really, really well last year. Let's see if it holds up this year. Stay tuned, and we're gonna get into this sweet machine. So this year we're back once again at Klamath Falls, Oregon, staying at the Running Y Resort. We'd like to thank them as well as our sponsors for making this series happen. All of our bikes have been outfitted with Schwalbe's radial tires. We have the Albert out back and a Magic Mary out front, so we've got an even test field across all bikes.
This year we're also supported by Endura for our gear, gloves, and helmet, and then Giro has hooked us up with some sweet shoes and knee pads to keep us safe out on the trails.
All right, so with that out of the way, let's get into the Nebo Peak. This is a 140-150 bike. A lot of fun. It's got a long and short geo flip chip position. We've opted for a size large. I'm the short guy here at 5'11". The rest of the crew are about 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", out of our primary test group. We have some of the guest testers that are down to like 5'9", also on this bike, and I think everyone agreed that it was a pretty good fit in this size large. Other key elements, I would say, there's a lot of models available, and at the time of filming, pricing goes from $67.99 to $10,100. It does have the Fazua Ride 60 drive unit, which will be a point we'll talk about, and a 480 watt-hour battery. So let's get into some of the key geo numbers and feel for you, Cole.
So me being on the taller end of the spectrum, generally most larges are right in my wheelhouse. This large with the 470 mil reach and paired with a 439 mil chainstay is a compact package, but not uncomfortably small. It allows me to really move the bike, pre-hop, and play around. With the wheelbase, I feel really centered with weight, which is one of the reasons why I think this bike corners as well as it does. And this bike was one of my favorite and most playful bikes from the last shootout. And having a different build kit, I'm actually finding through the rough stuff, I enjoy the Fox suspension more than I did the RockShox. I believe the air can on the float has a little bit more volume, which aids in that like small bump sensitivity.
Yeah, that was absolutely something that, we actually made a follow-up video after the shootout when RockShox released, and actually Ari had offered an update to their spec, was a larger volume can for that RockShox, and it did make a big difference in like our one critical area about the suspension feel, like hitting that first initial rough square edge bump in a like successive rock garden. I think the crew as a whole really once again enjoyed this bike. We're gonna try to keep these reviews short and more experiential because we can really get into the weeds and we can read you every number that's on the chart. But ultimately, I think, if you guys are interested in the bike, you can go to the website, you can read those charts and numbers yourself. We will have written reviews for all the bikes in this shootout series also at theloamwolf.com, and we'll have all those geo charts for you to check out there. But let's report back on Travis, who did the test loop back home, which was a predetermined loop that he put all the bikes through and timed and did a comparative on battery consumption and speed. It was a 13-mile loop with 1,300 feet of climbing. And again, every bike was tested in the same full power mode. So what are the numbers on that? What do you come back with?
So that loop, Travis did it on this bike in 1 hour, 1 minute, and 39 seconds and consumed 80% of the total available power. This was only beat out by the Bosch SX post update. It was 4 minutes faster than the Bosch SX pre-update.
Right. And also in Travis's test notes, he said that this felt like one of the fastest, if not the fastest bike. The handling, nimbleness, maneuverability, just general ease at which it built speed, especially going down and on flatter, traversy bits of trail, which is something we all agree upon. This bike, he said, is just really easy to get along with. So climbing, what do you think about that?
The input from the motor to your aid in power is one, very predictable and controllable, and it kind of melts away in the back of your mind. And when you want the power, it's there, especially with the ease access of the new button to be able to go into super boost mode.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun on some of the steep stuff, but overall, it gives you a very mountain bike experience. It's quiet, there's no rattle.
And then anywhere that you felt that the power was maybe lacking or you would have liked better performance, or anywhere that it stood out, like low cadence, high torque, or spinning higher RPMs, what do you think there?
So for me, I find that this system likes and receives power a little bit better with a higher cadence. Me being a lower cadence pedaler, it's something that I have to adapt to getting onto the bike. But with that said, it's not as bad as some other units that really favor that, like the T2s that really favor that high pedal cadence.
Right, okay.
But it is something that I do notice when I come on to the Fazua systems over the Bosch systems.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, gosh, I spent a lot of years like riding road bikes, and I think I like a higher cadence. So I'm typically spinning faster RPMs. So to me, I kind of liked this, and I sort of reserve that real low RPM, like explosive power for like really techie climbing where I really want that muscle to get up and over. And you know, I wouldn't say that this is the most powerful. It's not the weakest out of the mix, sure. But you know, there were definitely some spots where like I could tell like I was in one gear easier than I maybe was on another bike, or maybe 2 gears easier than like the Rocky Mountain, right? Which was kind of cheating against all these guys. But all right, so moving away from climbing and drive unit, overall handling, playfulness, phenomenal. Excitability of this bike.
One of the easier bikes for me to pre-hop, like when you're going trail side and you see a rider in front of you kind of take the rock jump or drop, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna pre-hop over it. And I did that a few times, and that aids for me in trail speed and in keeping that trail speed higher, and just how agile and nimble it is. But then getting onto some of the more chunkier terrain, I think you're limited by your setup. So if you're running a stiffer setup, you can get through some of those bigger drops and compression events, whereas the softer setup kind of favors all around riding. And that's something, when we got onto that black level trail where there was some drops and big G outs, like, oh, I'm gonna up fork pressure because it was diving a little bit. But being able to adapt the bike for your trails, obviously, and what you're riding makes a big difference.
For me, the bike remains one of my favorite play bikes. Yep. That's what I would kind of put this in the category of. Like, you know, I know in most of our shootouts we usually say, who's the ideal consumer? Who's this bike for? And for me, I would say that this bike is for two types of riders really stand out to me. One would be like the play shredder, the guy who maybe doesn't want a 160 bike, doesn't want something big and heavy and like glued to the ground. They love popping and airing out and slamming into turns and just being really dynamic and active and controlling over their bike. And I would say the other category of rider would kind of be more of like the general, you know, rider who maybe just wants a mid-assist e-bike, but doesn't, again, need a ton of travel, doesn't want a big, heavy bike. They're just like, yeah, 140 is totally enough travel for where I ride in the Midwest or Florida or like, you know, wherever it could be, right? That they're just like, I'm not seeking out these black diamond enduro trails, like just regular mountain bike trails. This bike's gonna also reward those people quite well.
And with how playful it is, that is in the long setting with the 29-inch rear wheel.
Yes.
You can go to the short with the mullet rear wheel, and it doesn't need it at all.
No, like I wouldn't do that. You know, I know some people really like mullets, and I get it if you're shorter, maybe that's something you gotta do. This bike doesn't need to be any more playful in my opinion. No. It is so playful as it is. I wouldn't want to really necessarily get any shorter either. I also wouldn't really want the BB lower because I like techie climbs. And yeah, I would say, like, to me, this is a really fun, it still is a very fun bike. Yeah. So that said, Fazua, how big of an issue is that when considering buying this bike? I know there, and I mentioned that if you're unfamiliar, there are a lot of, I don't know if we'll call them complaints, or people who have posted that they've had problems with Fazua drive units on other brands' bikes, maybe even on these as well. We've never had a problem on a Fazua on an Ari. Nope. But we have on
the Heckler last year did.
Heckler, Canyon, I think a YT. So there have been other bikes where we've had Fazua issues. We do hear they're pretty good about taking care of their stuff, but nevertheless, that is something to think about.
Unfortunately, just the day after filming this review, the motor started to experience intermittent power and sometimes no power at all. We reached out to Ari for a response and some action items on what we can do to remedy the issue. Go ahead and check out the article on theloamwolf.com for more information.
I think if I didn't hear about how well they have handled those issues, it'd be a different story of, oh, you know, I waited X amount of months. And from what I understand, the turnaround time has been pretty quick for those warranty issues. Outside from riding, there's nothing negative that stands out riding the bike. It really comes down to that Fazua known issue with the motor giving out and the technology not working when you most want it, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, again, I guess that's not something we can make your mind up on. All we can do is, you know, present what we've heard and seen in comment boards and all that other stuff. So we've had no problems with this. We have, you know, we have heard Fazua. Obviously, we know Ari quite well, and they have a really great customer service team. From our experiences, the drive unit is something to consider.
Sure.
I agree. Moving into like value, it seems like Ari bike prices have been climbing. I guess the rest of the industry has been as well, due to lots of things maybe beyond the bike industry's control globally. But when you look at, you know, fit, finish, you know, holes for cable routing, all the other stuff, does the price of this bike seem to justify, you know, itself based on appearance?
I think so. I think for me, looking at performance elite suspension over factory, I don't care. Like, that doesn't make a difference to me if I have gold or black. Personally, I think with this paint job and the black suspension, looks really good with the raw exposed carbon.
Very good looking bike.
Yeah, and you have wireless drivetrain. Like, there's the TRP brakes, which are very consistent, very, very powerful, especially in a bike in this weight, carbon bars. There's really nothing more you could ask for outside of personal preferences, in my opinion, and things that I would change.
There you have it. Overall, how this bike sits for you?
It's so fun.
Okay.
It's the one, like, when we were getting ready to ride this one, like, what are you riding? I was like, oh, I want to ride this, because I knew we were going back to that one trail. It's real tight and twisty, and like, it just makes you want to ride more, even in bad weather. And that's something that I think that always drives me, of looking at the number of bikes we have. It's like, okay, which one am I really excited to go out on, knowing its capabilities and just all around on any trail we're going to choose, just how fun it is. And like, that's kind of what I'm going for these days, is fun.
I hear you for sure. Yeah, and that's, you know, this year for the shootout, as you'll see, as we work our way towards the grand finale, you know, we have, you know, value, serviceability, drive unit, you know, all these factors that we are scoring out of 10 individually to help us put all these bikes in line, right, for our final. And one of the new categories that we have added is excitability, or how excited the bike makes you, right, on a scale from 0 to 10. This bike makes me excited a lot, you know, like, and the rest of the team agree, like all of the other riders who've been on this bike. You know, I'm not going to say it's the best bike for everybody or everywhere. It does still hold back a little when you get really steep and chunky. But like, again, those little moments where it kind of holds back, it excels more than those moments in other places. So this is a bike that is just so fun to ride. And I think, you know, even without doing some great big redesign, this thing still
didn't really need it.
Is a very fun bike.
And I think for me, going to that float in the back, and like, that made a big difference in that suspension soft feel with a good ramp up that I was looking for. And that was the one complaint I remember from last year that I had with the bike. It's like, oh, I wish it was just like a little bit more supple when I got the air pressure up. And that seems to have been solved with this spec option, at least.
There it is. Okay, so there is the Ari Nebo Peak 1.5. If you're willing to take a risk on the Fazua drive unit, this is for sure one of the most fun bikes, I would say, that we've ridden in the category, and something we absolutely would recommend to riders, and we still plan on taking out and riding at home because it's a whole lot of fun. So thanks again to all of our sponsors, Schwalbe, Endura, Giro, The Running Y, and Klamath Falls, for hosting us. Stay tuned for the rest of the videos in this series as we work our way to the grand finale. Please subscribe so you don't miss out. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.